Well, good morning. My name is Adam Lazar, and I'm the CEO and founder of Asarasi Tree Water. Tree water, wow, what an idea. We are here harvesting water from trees with the ability to replace the entire bottled water industry as we know it from a truly renewable and sustainable source. And how we do this is simply, I discovered this processing of maple production through going to maple producers' farms in the spring of 2008. It was minus 17 degrees outside. It was Vermont. It was cold. That place looks warm. I know nothing about maple. I know nothing about water. I'm just an average guy. I walk in, and I see this maple farmer throwing away 97% of the crop. He just spent thousands of hours and man-hours, dollars harvesting. And I said, what are you doing with that? What is it? He says, it's water. I said, water from trees. Interesting. Okay. Why are you not doing anything with it? I have no market, he says. I said, well, would you sell it to me? And that's where the idea came from. Here we are today. You know, we have a serious problem in the world. The world is running out of fresh water. The groundwater table is being exhausted by bottled water companies and other methods of extraction from deep ground aquifers, and we're here to solve the part of the water crisis. Not the entire part, just a small part, but we have to do our part. And so when we discovered this renewable and sustainable source of water, we said, wow, how much is there? There's 600 million gallons, almost and upwards of 1 billion gallons in this industry alone, and that's just maple. There's birch and 22 other deciduous trees that we can tap water resources from, getting two products, sugar and water. Well, refined sugar is not that great, but maple sugar is amazing. So if you haven't tried maple sugar, I hope you have, do it. It's incredible. Now, what that'll do, drive down the price of maple sugar and drive down the cost of water and from a renewable source. We can replace the entire bottled water industry with this byproduct without depleting our groundwater resources. We can also certify this product USDA organic, so unlike Flint, Michigan or other sources, you can trust this source of water. Now, the bottled water category is growing substantially. It will be the #1 beverage category in 2017, according to Nielsen's. In that category, sparkling water is growing at its fastest rate ever. People are ditching carbonated soft drinks from sodas to sparkling waters for healthier options. Great, people are getting healthier, and we can play in that space and be very successful. This is a $1.5 billion new growth opportunity over 5 years in that category alone, and we intend to capture a $250 million opportunity in that. Now, most of your bottled water comes from groundwater resources, right? With the exception of glaciers, which is still considered a groundwater resource. You know, water is far away from Fiji. They're trucking that in by freighter, then hauling that. That doesn't sound like a sustainable solution. Water from springs and deep ground aquifers depleting that. We have the most unique source. So we can compete on source and we can compete on price from living wells. And you can trust your source. Now, this is a really simple product. How is it produced today? Well, we have the epicenter of maple is right here in Buffalo. You may not realize this, but within a 800-mile radius, 400 miles in any direction, we have 20,000 maple producers making up the entire region. From Quebec to Pennsylvania to Minnesota to Maine, we have a phenomenal opportunity right here, and that's why we need to be here. Now, these farmers are processing their saps by reverse osmosis, a new technology in that marketplace that's been deployed for about 15 years. They're not boiling anymore to get rid of that water content. They take out the sugar molecule from the water molecule, and you have two products, the sugar and water, 97% water. 50 gallons of sap makes 1 gallon of syrup and 525 of our bottles. So put that in perspective, 18 million gallons of syrup were produced this year in 2016, and over 1 billion gallons of this water product were discarded. Now we have a great management team. Brian Perret came from Pepsi, launching One Coconut Water and Sobe Life Water over the past few years. Bob Denny comes from the fine wine portfolio management at Gallo Winery, and myself, I'm a former Army officer leading very complex teams with very limited resources, and that's how we got to where we are today. We also have a great advisory board. These folks have been well established since the beginning. Folks that come from the maple industry. Brenda comes from Duluth Trading Company on the finance side, and folks from the health, food, liquor, and other channels. Now, Neil Davis is one of our advisors right here in Buffalo. We are Buffalo focused. Now, we just retained a national sales team of 7 folks led by Adam Levitt, who came from the Haynes Celestial Group. That's a $1.2 billion company. He grew their growth from $100 million to $1.2 billion over 10 years. Now, he just left that a year ago, and he's running his new firm. We've retained that firm, and they are getting us access to customers all over the country. Those customers include Costco's, Trader Joe's, and Sprouts, to name a few. We've also hired a merchandising and sampling team to draw that pull through the channel. Customer awareness, product sampling is key in this product. Now, 7 folks are on the ground daily doing the heavy lifting, sampling our product. We just served 3,000 New Yorkers just a few weeks ago at the New York State Fair. Reebok Spartan Races came to us and said, hey, we really like your product. This is incredible. Would you sponsor our athletes at low cost, no cost, and get exposure across hundreds and thousands of athletes? We said, sure, so here we are. Now, we've had an incredible amount of traction. I mean, huge. For a very small startup brand, 180 days of selling since we launched our first production in April. We're in 450 locations across New England with 5 distributors with access to 20,000 retail customers. We just signed Baldor Specialty Foods last week, ShopRite this week, Key Foods, and Lean Box, and our growth is skyrocketing. We're in conversations with Stop & Shop and Wakefern Foods, access to 2,000 customers in their systems with UNFI. We're in conversations with Mitsubishi for capital investments and equipment for the farms. They said they want in. We're in discussions with Pepsi for distribution and Polar Beverages for distribution, and we would love to be in conversations with Starbucks. Now, retail pricing, how do we play? $1.99 a bottle gives you, the consumer, the opportunity to do what's right for the environment, what's right for your wallet, and what's right for your preference, impacting maple farmers, the environment, and the ability to be a sustainable, renewable thought and idea product. Now, we're price parity with bottled water in the marketplace today, and we can still make a 60% gross profit margin on those products and be a good impact company while being profitable as well. And we have a sight line to $200,000 in revenue this year. We're north of $100,000 already in that few short 6 months. By next year, we believe we will be a $1 million company, and we have growth opportunity in that $250 million space in the next few years, of $25 million growth in sales. Now, to put that in perspective, San Pellegrino is a $250 million global brand today, so we're not off target. Now, you might think, okay, what's next? Well, flavors, all tree-themed flavors. Many of your products, your flavors come from tree-based sources. So anything from cherry, apple, mango, orange, you name it, citrus. Now, we also have been asked for multiple packaging types. That include glass bottles that are 750 ml, institutional use for aluminum cans, very sustainable, and then, of course, syrup products. So we have some opportunities in grocery there as well. Now, we've created some intellectual property with Cornell University right down the road at Geneva. We created 2 proprietary processes that allow us to take this new farm product from orchard to table safely and efficiently and cost effectively, allowing us to produce on demand. Maple's a seasonal product, we get it. You can't make it all year round, so we draw down from frozen storage right here in Cheektowaga at Allied Frozen Foods. We have created the brand IP and trademarks around the brand, and we're contracting water rights with the suppliers, the farmers as we speak, creating additional barriers to entry. If we can create first options with all of these producers, locking the supply up, we will have created a huge barrier to entry for everyone else trying to compete. Now, you may not know this, but we're made right here in Buffalo at Mayors. We are Buffalo already, so why are we here? Because we want to be brought home. Sprague's Maple Farms down in Portville is one of our main suppliers today, but we intend to co-op with all the farmers in the 1,000 New York farmers to bring those products here, produce them here. We have packaging here in Buffalo. Account One Advertising, Neil Davis, he may be in the crowd today. He's been instrumental in creating the IP around the brand in terms of the brand identity. Now, we are a Taste New York product, and we're out there getting after those opportunities thanks to the governor's vision in that. We also have a huge amount of impact on the agricultural market here. It's a value-added product to New York maple producers. It enhances their profit margins 50%, making them an extra $8 per gallon on their existing crop. Put that in perspective, they make $15 today per gallon. We're adding $8 to that. That's huge for them. Now, we grow the maple industry in New York State from 25 million to 250 million overnight. This positively impacts all those producers. So, this is a $12 billion organic water opportunity. All water is not organic. It is all geologic until we came to market with an organic product. And with the right vision, with partnerships at the national level with folks like General Mills, who told me they thought that they could go from number 3 to number 1 in the organic food space by simply removing the exemption for water that is on the organics list today, because nobody has organic water until we came along. Now, we've invested $400,000, $100,000 of my own money. I sold my house, moved back east. I'm originally from New York, went to Hartwick College in Oneonta, and here we are today to ask you for the $1 million. This will grow the brand nationally. This will drive the deployment of funds and keep those monies right here in Buffalo. We will pay for our products, our inventory, our sales, our operations, our R&D right here, as we already are doing. So please, bring us home. Thank you.
So what's going to happen to this? You going to put them out of business?
Well, I hope so.
You hope so.
That's the idea.
Hope is not a plan, by the way. You're going to, right?
Let's get rid of all bottled water. There's no reason for it. And here we are in the industry today showing that we could do something different with an opportunity to change the way we've received and evaluate research.
I'm going to ask Matt, because he's in the beverage business, to ask the first question, but you should explain how you got the name means, because I think that, did you do that?
We did.
You did. Everybody gets that?
Well, this is the Latin for the sugar maple tree, Asarasi saccharosum. Our name comes from the roots of the language, and our water comes from the roots of the tree.
So we got to start with the guy in the beverage business, huh?
Yeah. Closer to my territory here. So I'm very sympathetic to the issue here. You know, Starbucks is a major seller of water, of course, and we had to move our production from California to Pennsylvania about 2 years ago because of the drought there, and it's a real issue, and it was a huge PR issue for us as well at the same time. So my question is centering on your strategy for bottling and distribution. They're the big bad players out there that dominate everything, Coke and Pepsi, and to a certain extent Ambev as well. What are you going to do to break through and achieve scale, and how are you going to keep them from taking their unfair share of the pie?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. We actually met with the head of innovations at Pepsi, and they said, well, we thought about this because we have a lot of orange juice, and we concentrate that orange juice, and we throw away a lot of this byproduct water. And they said, well, we didn't really think we could have a market for it. And I said, okay, that's interesting. Why don't we help you with that? Because we can create the market, and we can create the brand identity around that. It wouldn't be believable if a big corporation decided to do that. It doesn't have any street credibility, so to speak. And I think this is a great opportunity for folks like Pepsi to align themselves, or other distribution companies to align themselves with brands like ours that give credibility to what we're doing out there in the market and move a ton of product through those distribution channels.
By the way,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. And thank you. I'd like to introduce Brian Perret, who's come out to join us for the Q&A session. He is our Chief Marketing Officer. Brian, thanks for coming on out.
Thank you. Yeah, the other part of that is going in and looking at like the bigger producers and making sure we're locking up those first option contracts. So if somebody else does come in, and competition isn't always bad, all boats, raise with the tide. So if somebody comes in, that may be a good thing. That's not what we're planning on. We have a huge first mover advantage. You think about the seasonality of this. The next harvest is the end of next winter, beginning of spring. So if somebody hasn't prepped for this and developed the processes to be able to do something there, they're a year and a half away. And then again, if they haven't prepped for that next year, they're a year and a half away. So we have a huge first mover advantage, which really can't be overlooked. So if we're able to build ourselves in the marketplace, think about somebody like a sparkling ice. Where did they come from? They saw a trend, they capitalized on the trend, and now look, they're a huge, $400 million company before anybody even knew what happened. And so from our standpoint, we have those barriers, we have the means to keep people behind us, and we have that first mover advantage.
Great. And if I could ask just a second question related to that too, which is obviously production of maple syrup happens once a year, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. How do you deal with this business, which is about utilization of assets in manufacturing and bottling, when you have such a spike in seasonality? It's got to be tough to manage.
Well, it's everybody else's equipment, everybody else's infrastructure. So we're not investing in infrastructure, with a very small exception on farms where they may need a small piece of equipment, which is where Mitsubishi comes in. So when we aggregate this product at, say, Mayer Brothers here locally, they have that facility and infrastructure to take in thousands of truckloads at a time to be able to process just our finished goods. Now, we also deploy a 300-gallon tote, which is used in the apple juice and orange juice industries, again, a seasonal product. And they freeze those products as well in 300-gallon ice cubes. And today we have, I'm happy to say, 50 units of this sitting in frozen warehouse here to exercise opportunities that we didn't see before.
That way we can extend out our production. We don't have to produce everything all at once. We can even out our production schedule from when it's needed.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
I have a couple of questions. One, is it naturally effervescent, or do you guys add CO2 to it?
We add the CO2. Bubbles are fun, right? And the flat water business is kind of boring flat.
Yeah. Okay, and then also, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but there are other sparkling water companies out there, and sure. So it seems to me it becomes almost a marketing play, right? You've got to kind of get your product out there and put some marketing dollars behind it, and when that happens, in a product that's kind of fairly much, ubiquitous, it takes a lot of money, right? And I think it's it's if you plug a bunch of money into it, then then it works. I think.
But if you think about it, what we talked about before, a lot of those sparkling water companies compete on the uniqueness of source, but all of their sources come from groundwater tables. So we have a kind of a confluence of things that are happening here. One is the trend of consumers moving away from soft drinks, but still wanting something that's fun, something that's effervescent, something to replace their sodas. Now, the other thing is that there's a lot of things going on with our groundwater resources. Droughts are just one of them. Things leaching into brooks and aquifers, and even our municipal water supplies, which everybody's been told, hey, just drink tap water, it's fine, no big deal. But if you live in Flint, Michigan, you know all too well that's not the case. So as these things come together, they're going to look to these other brands and say, you know what, those brands are coming from things that are being depleted, things that I can't necessarily trust these days. Yeah. Now, we have a source that can be certified organic. No other organic water in the world. And so we're going out there and saying, you can absolutely trust this source. We have a competitive advantage that nobody else has. And so it is going to take some dollars to get that message out there and make sure consumers understand that. But think about it. Once they do understand that, we have such a jump over where they are that what consumers think about them and how they think about us is going to be a huge differential.
Tracy.
So just maybe because this.
Let me just ask you a question. What did you think of the beverage?
Timely. I was thirsty, and I prefer sparkling to flat. So I'm one of your probably converted already customers. So.
And did you tell the audience, because you didn't bring samples for everybody, unfortunately.
We tried.
We tried.
So what would you say? Any difference between that and the water that you drink normally from a bottle? Or New York City's tap water?
New York City's finest tap water. I do have to acknowledge New York City's finest tap water. We always drink that, but I actually found this to be quite refreshing. So it has a nice taste to it. I don't notice anything, no maple syrup. I was curious if there was going to be a tree taste to it, and there isn't. So I appreciate that. So it was good to pass that
It's
around.
pure water.
Back to the questions
Pure
now.
water. But I guess it goes back to my question about your long-term strategy, maybe, because I think I heard you say how you have a locked-up first mover. That was my first question of how do you really, you can manage a distribution with the multiples that are out there, but in terms of locking up the farms, what's your likelihood of locking up all those farms in terms before your next competitor comes in? Mm-hmm. That was one question. I think you answered some of that, but maybe if you could just go back to it. But the second is really on strategically moving forward, because you highlighted line extensions, right? What's your inflection point in terms of taking you from this to the other product extensions? So how are you thinking of the future?
So I think you have a two-part question.
It is,
and
front and back.
Yeah, so locking up the supply chain. So we began working with the maple syrup associations, the maple producers associations, allowing us to access thousands of folks at one place at one time. We're getting emails daily from farms saying, please, can you take our permeate waters, which is what they call that in the industry. Can you help us with this? Because it really incentivizes them. It creates a differentiation in terms of their livelihoods. And these are not, rich farmers. These are everybody working as hard as they can to make and scratch out the livelihood they can. And so working through those associations gives us access to thousands of farms without going out and visiting each farm. And then we can co-op that product at one facility where they're bringing that in and giving us, the commoditized volume that we need. Now, secondly, I think in terms of flavor development is really critical. And when we look at, some of the latest trends in sparkling water, you look at, say, sparkling ice or Fuse or Izzy or somebody of those other competitors in the same space. And flavor development is really, you get a well-established, idea and brand, and then you expand very quickly. So utilizing flavor houses that use organic ingredients, that utilize, naturally occurring sugars, if we were going to do a very low sugar product to prevent that carbonated soda impact. So we're looking at all those different options. We have one core product today. We tend to expand out very quickly in those flavors.
And I think part of that is, the strategy is at the outset, distribution is your growth. Get in anywhere you can. Then as you get the distribution, then you're introducing line extensions. And so you're getting more shelf space. You're generating more turns in each of those stores. And then the same thing with packaging. So other usage occasions. So if we do a 750, then that's a table bottle. Or if we do cans, we can get into schools or other places that won't allow glass and things of that nature. So all of that growth comes at a a set timeline. We just have to manage how we do that.
You guys, we got time for one more question, but not for those very long answers, all right?
Do you guys have any personal values which you brought into building this business? And do you think you're going to stick to it as the business becomes successful?
And I had a hard time hearing that.
Do you have any personal values which you brought into building this product and this
Yes.
business? And do you think you're going to stick to it as this business becomes really big and you become one of the larger players?
Absolutely. I was living in California a year and a half ago. I was a corporate gypsy. I followed the jobs around, made money, and found myself living in Los Angeles where the aquifers are depleted and we're down to 12% in our reservoirs across that state. It's a national security issue. I have 2 children. I want to see the world do something different, look at our resources differently, because it's not going to be there. It's not there for us now. Why should we anticipate it's there for them later? And so when we're looking at, what are the values that I hold dear, it's really deeply motivating for me to follow, hey, I want the world to be a better place, selfishly for my kids, and more importantly for mankind. And so I think that's, a really important principle for me, and I've always followed that philosophy.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job. Good job, man. Good job. Thanks, bud.
Everybody.